morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR and welcome back to another video. Now, for the past few days, I've seen many people on Twitter posting these long tweets about what they thought were the worst parts of every Pokemon generation. I guess because they don't want these mistakes to be repeated in the future, or they just have nothing better to do with their time. And although I wanted to join in on the fun, I couldn't contain my thoughts within the 280 character limit, so by making this video, I'll be able to flesh out my points a little bit better. So spoiler alert, your favorite generation will be bashed at some point in this video. And don't think I'm making this video to hate on any particular generations, because I pretty much love them all. So please don't be upset when I call out your favorite generation on one of its flaws, it's merely my silly opinion. I don't think these minor imperfections ruin the games or anything, I just hope we don't see these pop up again in the future. So sit back, don't be salty, and let's take a ride. So starting off with Generation 1, I think most people can agree that the worst part is just how fundamentally broken a lot of the game mechanics are. Certain moves can quite literally break the game in Generation 1, which is why I opted to run Wrap on my Dragonite instead of Hyper Beam. Yeah, that should be a red flag. And it's not just Wrap, there are a ton of other ridiculous moves too. And I'm sure you all are more than familiar with how broken the Psychic type was in Generation 1. And if you're not, then allow me to explain. In Gen 1, Special Attack and Special Defense were combined into one stat known as the Special Stat, which means that if you had a high Special Stat, like pretty much all Psychic type Pokemon do, then it meant that you were pretty busted both offensively and defensively. On top of that, Dark type didn't exist, Ghost types had no damaging moves besides Lick with a measly base power of 20, and the only decent bug move in Generation 1 was Twin Needle, which was exclusive to Beedrill, and Beedrill kind of sucks, not to mention that he also loses to Psychic types because he's part poison. So in case the Psychic types weren't busted enough because of their stats, they also had almost no weaknesses. I could go on and on about the faulty Gen 1 mechanics, but I think that's enough to prove my point. In my opinion, the biggest thing Generation 2 is guilty of is a lack of Pokemon diversity and subsequently horrible team building. In the Johto region, you are extremely limited when trying to build a diverse team. A lot of the new Generation 2 Pokemon either suck or they aren't even available until you reach the Kanto region, like Houndour, Murkrow, or Larvitar. And the Pokemon that do have good stats in Generation 2, like Heracross, most likely suffer from an extremely lackluster move pool. And even if you want to go back and use viable Pokemon from Gen 1, like Arcanine or Exeggutor, then good luck because most evolutionary stones aren't even available until the post-game. A ton of Generation 2 Pokemon also get screwed over by the old physical and special moves divide that wasn't fixed until Generation 4. The most glaring example of this is Sneasel, who has the stats to be a decent Pokemon, but Dark and Ice are both special types in Gen 2, which renders Sneasel almost completely useless. The overall lack of EXP in Johto also doesn't help since you probably won't reach level 50 by the time you get to the league, so it's almost more worthwhile to just steamroll your way through the game with just your starter Pokemon, Ampharos, and the Red Gyarados like a lot of people do. There are just a ton of design flaws with the new Pokemon introduced in Johto, and that really limits your creativity when team building. Fortunately, the Gen 4 remakes fixed a lot of these glaring design issues, but they can still be felt in the original Gold and Silver games. It's hard to really find a glaring issue that affects all of Generation 3 aside from some weird downgrades like the removal of the time system and the inability to transfer Pokemon forward from Generation 2, but that was mostly just hardware limitations. There are also some other minor problems like Hoenn is awkwardly laid out and you need a ton of HMs to explore the end of the game, but the main thing that disappoints me is the characters. Ruby and Sapphire is the first time Game Freak really focused on making a story-based game, and I think they mostly did a good job, but good lord, most of the characters you meet along the way are among the most stale in the entire series. Brendan/May are meh rivals at best, Wally is pretty much abandoned for 90% of the game, and Archie and Maxie are basically clones of each other with slightly altered dialogue. The only character in Generation 3 that I find mildly interesting is Steven Stone, if I'm being honest. Again, the remakes did help a bit by adding some extra character to Wally, Maxie, and Archie, but most of them still feel rather flat when compared to major characters from other regions. And to clarify, no, I am not talking about Zinnia, who's actually a good character, because she's technically from Generation 6, not Generation 3. Generation 4 just feels slow. It's not even the slow text, the slow engine, the slow battle animations, the slow HP bar, but the pacing feels slow, the routes feel slow. There are even multiple locations like Mount Coronet, the Blizzard route, the Marshlands, and the Fog route that all feel specially designed just to slow you down. Which is sad because I really like how open and explorable the Sinnoh region is, but all of these obstacles and things that slow your movement and the ungodly amount of HMs make me not even want to explore most of these routes. Like, I'm pretty sure the term HM Slave was popularized by the existence of Bidoof and the 6 HMs that you need to get through Mount Coronet. It's ridiculous. Diamond and Pearl have a lot of other flaws, including balance issues and the lack of fire types that Platinum mostly manages to patch up, but the speed issue pretty much remains the same, except they managed to speed up surfing, so yay for that, I guess. The Unova region is linear. Now, I know, almost all Pokemon games are linear, especially now since the storylines are becoming more and more important. In Generation 5, oh my goodness, does it have a great story, but with that comes the cost of not being able to really go off the main path. Even so, I think the overall design of the Unova region is to blame. Look at this map. Unova is pretty much the only region that doesn't have any kind of optional route or area to explore, aside from these water routes next to Nuvema Town that you have to backtrack for. Even in the other extremely linear Pokemon games, we always get a brief amount of time to explore an optional area because the layout of the region allowed for it, but the design of Unova's map just doesn't let that happen. They could have really experimented with this oval-shaped area, maybe have more than 8 gyms and the player has to choose which 3 unique gyms to challenge by going to the east or west, but nope, they just close off Eastern Unova and use it as an underwhelming post-game. At first glance, Black 2 and White 2 improves the Unova region map by adding a ton of new areas, but then you realize it really doesn't solve the issue because they just close off even more areas from the first game. Generation 6 is easier than Velcro sandals, and for me, that personally kills the replay value of these games. Why would I waste my time replaying them if I know I'm not gonna have any fun? A lot of people will defend Generation 6's lack of difficulty, just saying it's the EXP share's fault or we all magically got good at Pokemon, but that's definitely not the case because I can still struggle when playing some of the older Pokemon games and I have never used the EXP share in the Kalos region. I can play through Kalos without an EXP share, Nuzlocking, without items, without Megas, with my hands tied behind my back, and these games would still be a breeze because the AI is horrible, the way EXP is rewarded even without the EXP share is unbalanced, and most trainers, including gym leaders, don't even have 4 moves on their Pokemon. It's embarrassing. And Oras isn't much better. Junichi Masuda even publicly stated these games were designed to be easy because kids would rather play smartphone games. Like, what kind of logic is that? Who would want to play a game like that? And despite all of that, most of the Megas are still restricted until you reach the post-game, as if adding them to the main story would have made the games any easier. Hey kid, here's a Kanto Mega and a Mega Lucario, go have some fun. Oh, nice. Can I have the other 28 Megas that I bought this game for? Nope, they're too broken. Wait till the post-game. Enjoy spamming close combat, though. Too many cutscenes. The Alola games hold your hand tighter than your parents do when they see people like me at the mall. Fortunately, the battles in this generation are much more challenging and enjoyable, especially in Ultra, but when you're just traveling around, it feels like you never get to breathe. Hey there, kid, you want a free Pokefinder that you'll never use? Alola Photo Club, how about that? I'll be getting my dang old back. Here's a Max Revive, I'm sorry about that. My wife died yesterday. I mean, really, I'm sure we'd find all of this stuff even if we weren't being guided around all the time. And the way it continues for most of the game just becomes annoying at a certain point. It never actually feels like you're journeying around Alola, it feels like you're just sightseeing with your friends since Lily, Hau, and Professor Kukui show up every 15 steps. And I don't know, maybe that's the atmosphere they were going for, but I'm simply not a fan of it. But anyway, that about wraps up my thoughts on all of these games. Just to reaffirm, I don't hate any of these games for their flaws. The good definitely outweighs the bad. So try not to be too mad at me and go ahead and leave a comment with some things that you think each generation could do better. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you want. I'll see you guys next time.